Hello everyone. Today I'll be recapping a film from 2015 titled He Never Died. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie recaps. Waking up from a terrible nightmare, Jack makes his way to the front door after hearing someone knocking. As he's opening the door, we see a more clear view of two huge scars on either side of his upper back. He is greeted by his elderly landlord and immediately knows why she's there. He goes back into his room and opens a huge briefcase. Inside, we see lots of money in stacks, both very old and new. And also an old antique pistol and a black and white photo. He grabs some money from a stack and hands her the rent. Before she leaves, he asks her what day it is, and also the date, indicating he hasn't left his apartment in quite some time. After she tells him, he gets dressed and goes to the church to play bingo. When the game is over, he makes his way to a shady area where he meets Jeremy, a young intern who works as a nurse at the local hospital. He gives him some money and retrieves a wrapped up package from the trunk. He reminds Jeremy to be discreet with the next package as well. When he gets home, he places it in the fridge. He hears a knock at the door and answers it to find a nervous teenage girl. He is confused, not knowing who she is. She stares at him for a bit and then runs away. He closes the door and goes to lie down. As he drifts off, two men break into his apartment and one of them questions him about Jeremy. He tells Jack that they're looking for Jeremy, and they spotted the two of them meeting. He pulls a gun on Jack, who immediately throws it to the ground. After the man punches Jack, he fights the both of them. He gets a bullet through his right hand and mace in his eyes, but none of it seems to faze him. After beating them up, he throws both men out and wraps up his bleeding hand. That evening, he gets a call from his ex-girlfriend Jillian. She tells him that her daughter Andrea had come to see him earlier and now she's out drinking. She believes he said something to her and that's why she went and got drunk. She wants him to get her and bring her back home safe. He asks her why her daughter would come to see him, and when he realizes why, he says,
"I hate you."
After she tells him which bar Andrea is at, he tells her to never call him again and goes back to sleep. Later, he goes to the bar and asks the bartender if he saw Andrea. The bartender tells him that she left with a man named Tim Dell. Jack uses a directory to find Tim's apartment. When he gets there he finds Tim, a 30-something-year-old man. After a little intimidation from Jack, Tim lets Andrea out. After Jack finds out that she's okay, he decides to leave. She stops him and asks if the two of them can go to a nearby diner and grab a bite and talk. He takes her to the Times Square diner where they meet Kara, the waitress. As Andrea and Kara chat for a bit, Jack is curious to know if Andrea may have something growing out her back, much like he did. He doesn't see anything. Later, Andrea asks if she can stay over at Jack's place for 2 days. He sighs in approval. The next morning he awakens from another terrible nightmare and removes the bandage to reveal a completely healed hand. He goes to the diner and orders tea. Out of thin air, an old man appears at the table behind him. He looks over his shoulder at the man, and the man looks back at him. Jack becomes extremely uncomfortable and leaves. As he does, the old man disappears. Jack then goes to meet Jeremy. At a short distance from the rendezvous, Jack witnesses the two men from earlier kidnapping Jeremy and leaving with his car. He hijacks the mailman and follows them in his van. He gets to the building where the two men are torturing Jeremy. After one of them strikes him in the head with a hammer, he gouges his eye out and beats the other man unconscious. He frees Jeremy and drops him off at an ambulance before running away with the package from Jeremy's car. He places it in the fridge back at home and goes back to bed. Jack and Andrea go to the same diner. At the counter, a bald menacing man has been waiting for them to show up. He creates a distraction by knocking the tray full of empty glasses out of one of the waitress's hands, and returns to drip poison into the glass of water that Jack had ordered. When Kara brings them their drinks, Andrea sets up Kara and Jack on a date 2 days from then. When Kara leaves, Jack notices the old man from before staring at him a few rows down. Andrea turns to see what he's looking at and asks him if he knows the old man. Jack is startled by the realization that Andrea can also see him. He tells her to avoid the old man at all costs. As Jack and Andrea make their way back to his apartment, he begins to slowly slip out of consciousness. When they get to his place, his condition worsens by the second. Jack suddenly hears a car pull up and some men arguing outside. He peeks out the blinds and sees the two men he beat up earlier along with the bald guy. He makes his way outside to finish them off, but the poison finally kicks in and Jack drops dead right in front of them. They wrap his body up in heavy chains and drag him to the docks. Before they can dump the body, Jack suddenly awakens from the dead and grabs the baldy. They both plunge into the water and the other two henchmen begin to panic and flee the scene. They decide to wait in the car in case Baldy made it back. Instead, they are shocked to see that Jack is the one that came back. As Jack steadily approaches the car, the two knuckleheads just sit there, contemplating what to do next. He opens the driver door and pulls out the first henchman. As the other one escapes, Jack rips out his throat and proceeds to eat it. Jack returns home and goes for the package in the fridge. Before he can grab it, he turns to Andrea and demands that she leaves. It is evident that he is concerned for her safety as he is slowly losing control of his dark cannibalistic side. She demands to know why he wants her out, but he instead intimidates and insults her until she becomes upset and storms out the apartment. Just as she leaves, Jack manages to fight off his cannibalistic urge and keeps it at bay. Jack then witnesses an argument between the landlord and one of the tenants, an obnoxious man who enjoys blasting music without any concern for the other tenants. Jack tries to avoid interjecting. But after the landlord leaves in a fit of frustration, Jack confronts the rude man and leaps at him, killing him, feeding on him, and disposing of his body. The next morning, Jack attends another game of bingo. This time he becomes much more invested in the game in an attempt to distract himself from his urge to feed on human flesh. When it fails, he makes his way to a bar and attempts to get drunk, but having refrained from alcohol for the past couple of years, Jack decides not to break his streak and leaves in a fit of rage. Upon exiting the bar, Jack finally gives in to his bloodlust. He spots two men smoking outside, and, in a bid to ease his conscience, he decides to give himself a reason to kill them, no matter how petty it may be. He decides to test them by dropping a $100 bill in front of them and walking away. However, instead of taking it for himself, the man picks up and hands the bill to Jack. In the background, the creepy old man can be seen closely observing Jack from a moving car. Jack then walks a few blocks and approaches a group of men. He bumps into the first guy, and instead of retaliate, the man apologizes to Jack. Now weakening by the minute, Jack finds himself clutching to a fence while staving off his hunger for bloodshed. Three punks then walk by as Jack begins to vomit and they insult him for it. He looks at the two in front of him, and realizes that they're just teenagers. But there is a man with them. Jack quickly approaches him as he reaches for his gun. When Jack returns to his apartment, he attempts to pry out the bullet with a kitchen knife. As he does so, his recorder plays a message from a French gangster who claims to have kidnapped Andrea and killed her mother. He tells Jack to meet him at the docks or else he will kill Andrea next. Later that night, Jack retrieves the package from the fridge, a blood pack, and proceeds to drink it all up. The next morning, he goes to the docks, but nobody except the old man is there. He then goes to the hideout of one of the city's crime bosses and requests to see him. Instead, he meets his son Alex, who is now taken over since his father Tom was brutally murdered. Jack used to be his father's bodyguard, and left shortly before he was killed. Since all the gang members in the area work for Alex, Jack asks if he is responsible for Andrea's kidnapping. But Alex strongly denies any involvement, and claims he is a different man from his father. Jack then says his goodbyes and leaves. That evening, Jack returns to the diner, in which he finds that the manager has been murdered. He calmly walks into an adjacent section in which multiple gang members had been expecting him. He sees Kara, who quietly asks him to help her. He then walks into the bathroom and a gang member follows him in. But after a short while, only Jack exits. He pulls out a knife from his lower back and sits Kara down. He asks if she could give him a ride back to his place after this is all over, and right after she agrees, one of the gangsters walks up to Jack and shoots him point blank in the head. But Jack seems unfazed, as usual, and he slowly rises, only to kill all of them, except for the man whose eye he gouged out earlier. He plans to interrogate him back at his place. When Kara refuses to drive him back to his place, he promises her $1 million if she does. She reluctantly agrees. Jack stuffs the man in her trunk and uses a set of pliers to remove the bullet, as he says it will give him a headache if he leaves it in. When they get to Jack's place, he shows Kara all the money in his briefcase. She looks through the other items and finds a 150-year-old bottle of wine and a picture of Jack in the French military during World War I in 1914. She refuses to believe any of it, but he reminds her that she just witnessed him take a bullet through the head. She asks how old he is, but he doesn't know himself. He does, however, tell her that he is mentioned in the Bible, in which his name is Cain, the brother of Abel, whom he killed. He is the son of Eve and a fallen angel, a Nephilim, hence the scars on his back, as his wings were cut off. As Kara becomes overwhelmed, Jack leaves the room and enters the bathroom in which he has tied up the one-eyed gangster. He finds out that he is just a hired goon that doesn't know anything other than what is told to do. Jack decides to spare him. As he enters the kitchen, he finds the French guy waiting for him. He forces Jack outside at gunpoint, but Jack easily kills him and returns to tell Kara to take how much she wants and leave. When Jeremy wakes up at the hospital, Jack visits him and asks how he got involved with the gang and what they wanted from him. Jeremy says he took a loan from their boss to pay off his student debt, but couldn't repay him on time. When Jack asks the name of the boss, Jeremy eventually remembers that it was Alex. Jack then goes to Kara and asks for another favor, with a huge sum of money for her if she accepts. She drives him over to Alex's compound. While driving there, Jack asks Kara to take his daughter and look after her, as she has nobody to care for her anymore. Jack goes to the compound, knocks out the guard and breaks in. After taking a shotgun blast to the abdomen, he wipes out all of the goons and steps into Alex's office. While beating the hell out of Alex, Jack hears someone crying from behind the bookshelf in the office. He drops the shelf, revealing a hidden door that leads to the bathroom. When he enters, he sees Andrea tied up and a video camera is recording her. She is in terrible condition, unable to open either of her eyes, and drained of energy. Jack carries her outside and hands her over to Kara, who he tells to take her to the hospital. When she asks why he refuses to go with her and his daughter, he just tells her that he's staying. He goes back inside and breaks Alex's ankle. Then he picks up Alex's phone and makes a call, telling his friends to come to the compound as he has Andrea with him. His plan is to draw out and kill all of the criminals that want to get to him. He takes a seat and asks Alex why he thought he could kill him when he knew he cannot be killed. Alex says that their plan wasn't to kill him but to hurt his daughter to get to him. They were going to beat his daughter, film it and mail the video to him anonymously. Jack kicks him down into the bar and throws him onto the pool table. He then finds out that Alex discovered that he had a daughter around the same time that he did. Jack also finds out that Alex pieced together that it was him who murdered his father, and that's what started this entire revenge plot. Jack says that he killed his father Tom only because he wanted to stay under the radar, but Tom had other ideas. He drags Alex up onto a counter, and tells him that up until he had sent his goons after him, he managed to stave off his hunger for flesh, and instead resorted to drinking human blood from the hospital. But now that he had reawoken his cannibalistic side, Jack is going to eat him alive. Just then, the old man appears once more. Jack becomes enraged and asks him why he only showed up now, when he is killing a pathetic low-life criminal. He begins to recount all of the bloodshed he had caused over his lifetime. How he had murdered thousands when he was Ramses of Egypt, and impaled so many innocent people as Vlad the Impaler, in Romania. All of those times, the old man, who we come to know as Death himself, did nothing. Jack committed all of those terrible slaughters so that Death would intervene and take him away because he was sick of being alive so long, but instead Death mocks him by just watching. But only now he has come to visit him. Jack believes that he is suffering a life of immortality for committing the first act of murder against his brother Abel. Just as he demands that the old man let him die, Kara runs in and asks him to help her get Andrea into the car. Death disappears the moment she enters the room. Jack decides to help her, and before he leaves, he tells Alex that one day he'll see the old man. As soon as Jack leaves the room, the old man appears beside Alex and greets him in a monstrous otherworldly voice. The end. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.